Okay, gentlemen, ready to go for tonight. As always, nice to have everybody here around the table and around the computer. Parasha Tzav. Okay. Parasha Tzav on page 568 in the Art Scroll Chumashim. Vaydav Hashem Moshe Lemar. Hashem speak to Moshe saying, Tzav es Aaron v'esbonov Lemar. Command Aaron and his sons saying, Zos Torah Ola, this is the Torah, this is how you bring in Ola. And then he continues here, Ola, this is the Ola, al Mokta al Mizbeach al Hayla Araboka, that will be on the fire, on Mizbeach, all night long until the morning, and the fire in Mizbeach shall consume it. So we have a very interesting thing over here. When it speaks about Tzav, Rashi says, what does Tzav mean? Tzav means to command. Why are we commanding? We know nowhere else do we say to command. And here suddenly we speak about commanding people. Why? We're not big into sort of like bossing people around. Maybe we are, but But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying over here, I want you to tell Aaron and to tell his children, this is how you do it. So Rashi says an important thing. And Rashi says, you know what it is all about over here? You know why we have to write Tzav? Tzav means when you're trying to get people to do something. Ein Tzav Eloshen Ziruz. That means to get people to rile them up to make sure they do it correctly. Do you know why we have to do this? Says Rabbi Shimon, that Hashem has to get people moving. We have to make sure people do the right thing, specifically when it comes to money. Okay? So we have over here something very interesting, and I find when you think about money, you think about the issues that sometimes money can cause, etc., this comment becomes so much more, I guess, enlightening. It's how do we put it? Not having money is a difficult thing. I don't think anybody wants to be tested with not having money. It's not an easy test. However, if anybody were to say to you, but you know what, having money, that's easy. Having money is also a test. It comes with its stresses. It comes with its problems. So when you have money, whether it is that everybody is constantly asking you for money, constantly. It depends where you daven. Maybe in our shul not as bad. But, I've been, when you go to certain shuls, I learn somewhere in the morning, and there are people that come in one after the other. Is Mr. So-and-so here? He's just left. Is Mr. So-and-so here? He's just left. Wherever he goes, people are hounding them. You get hounded by people. And then when you start giving people charity, have you ever had it when you give people charity and they knock on your door and you give them a voucher and what happens? Excuse me, that's not enough. What do you mean it's not enough? That's what I've given you. That's what I have to give you. It's not enough. And the problem is when you're wealthy, nothing you give people is ever enough. Has anybody ever turned around, from a wealthy individual, you get 10 pounds, you think to yourself, come on, he's loaded. So you give you 100 pounds. Come on, he's got tons of money. 500 pounds. I guess a decent donation, but I mean, come on. You know how much the guy earns? 500 pounds, 1,000. One point or another. And everybody expects, not every Tom, Dick, and Harry that knocks on your door expects that you will be the person that will get hundreds and hundreds of pounds off this guy. And when they don't, there's this absolute shock. There's this absolute look of disappointment on them. Like, do you not understand who I am? Do you understand how important my cause is? And then you have all the people that start kissing up to you. Have you ever had that? Wealthy people, and I don't get that kind of thing. I'm sure that you don't get it either. But have you ever seen people that it happens to? The wealthy people specifically, everybody comes over, I'll make up a name. Reb Shloime, come on in, sit down. It's so nice to see you. If the guy had no money, you wouldn't look at him. You'd send him in the back of the shul and tell him to sit down and just down and then be happy that we allow you into our shul. Suddenly he has money, comes in the front. Reb Shloimo, it's so nice. Such a choshev person. Yeah, you have a dvater to say? Let's hear your dvater. The same guy, if he didn't have any money, if he came over to the same Rav and says, have a dvater, what do you know? I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. Him, yeah. So the flattery could drive you crazy. And the fact that people make you crazy. And then on top of that, we all know what sort of issues money causes amongst family And specifically, as I heard Rabbi Wein say many times recently on the CDs that I've been listening to, he says there's no such fight like a family fight, right? And there's no family fight as bad as a family fight over money. Yeah? I mean, there's no people that have, I like that, David. Yeah? He says, Perchik says, money's the world's curse. And Tevye says, may the Lord smite me with it and never cure me. Okay, David's always got something good to say. But the truth is, if you've ever seen families that have gotten embroiled in a money argument, yeah, suddenly they won't talk to the same brothers that were friendly, etc., and they don't talk to each other, they don't invite each other to simchas, they don't sit on the same side in shul, they don't sit on the same table at a simcha. When somebody invites them as at the same table, they come over. I never understood it. Somebody's invited you, he's brought you to simcha, he sat you somewhere. It happens to be that the person you don't like is at the same table. People have the chutzpah to walk over to the Baal Simcha and say, excuse me, Michael, do you know where you sat me? It's like, wait a minute. I've invited you, come join in my simcha. I'm paying for your food. I'm paying for the entertainment. I'm paying for the booze tonight. You're going to have a nice time. That's all you have to say. I've sat you on a table where there's somebody whom you don't like. Sit on the other side of the table. Figure out with somebody else. Do you know what I mean? You have to go to Baal Simcha and yell at them. People get into this rut. They fight each other, and the lawyers and the amount of money that people spend, and he's not going to get more than me, even if it's just a becher that one got more than the other, and even if the other person doesn't need it, and you don't need it. Neither of us need the money.
Probably couldn't find anybody else to take the lights anyway.
But it's so, and you see these things and it rips families apart. And the crazy thing is, you sometimes see parents and they leave their children this tremendous amount of money. Now, I am not saying parents shouldn't leave their children money, but I was speaking to somebody recently and he said, my father-in-law doesn't want to leave us money after he passes away. He wants to shower us with money while he's still alive so he can enjoy the fact that we're using his money. Yeah? He's going to put all that money in the bank, then he's going to die after 120, and only then will we all enjoy it. And he won't get to see us enjoy it. Yeah? So I said to him recently, I said, you build a loft? He says, yeah. He said, my father-in-law helped me build the loft. I said, it's nice of him. He says, look, Baruch Hashem, my father-in-law is a man of means, and he can help us build the loft. So he came to me and he said, I know you need a loft. I know you need more bedrooms. I'll help you build it. So in his will, he had a look, and already it cost 50,000 pounds. So he took that out of my chelik. But he said, why should I have to, he said, as my father-in-law said to me, he says, why should you have to sweat like crazy to get this kind of money together to be able to build your loft? And in either you'll manage or you won't manage. Meantime, this money is sitting in my bank account, it's doing nothing. When I could give it to you in my lifetime and watch you enjoy it. Watch my grandchildren have some more raflas, have some more room in their house, not to have to fight with everybody. Every time they have to have a sleepover, everybody has to turn the whole house upside down. And there'll be another toilet, and there'll be another shower. It's wonderful. Yeah? Instead, people, no. You hold on. And then suddenly, after 120, they die, and they leave a massive fortune. I'm going to leave my kids so much money. They're going to be so happy. They're going to be so taken care of. Do you know what ends up happening? They start arguing. What did he say, and how much did he get? How come I got more? How come he got less? And instead of you having the enjoyment of watching your children use the money, do you know what that money ends up doing? Goes straight to the lawyers. Straight to the solicitors who are arguing and fighting and battling back and forth. Yeah? So when it comes to money, money is not an easy thing. And therefore, the Torah tells you over here, even though forgetting about the discussion about why Bnei Aaron are losing money over here, that's irrelevant. The Bnei Aaron weren't really properly losing money, but that's a separate discussion. That's not for tonight. That's for tonight's Divrei Torah. But money is a difficult test. Losing money is an even more difficult test. And so therefore, if you have a case where the Bnei Aaron stand to lose a little bit of money, how much are they losing already? This is an offering. This wasn't something they were going to get anyway. There's an extra, and now they don't get it. Says the Torah, wait a minute. On such a thing, you want to discuss money, things that Bnei Aaron lose, Tzav es Bnei Aaron, that's Aaron es Bonav Lemor. You have to command them. You have to tell them, and you have to tell them properly. You have to realize and you have to know. This is the mitzvah, and even if you stand to lose money, as difficult as it might sound to you, you should still do it. Yeah? I went to a shop tonight, and a guy walks in. He looks at me and goes, "Oh, Rabbi Eisenberg. I'm like, Fievel, what can I do for you?" He goes, "Can you explain to me something? How come all the good things in life are preceded by spending so much money? You know, and that pain of spending the money." So I looked at him and I said, Fievel, you could try to enjoy spending the money instead of dreading it. And he gave me this look, and I'm like, okay, I get it. It's not that much fun. And then I looked around again, and I said, Fievel, your wife said, "You want me to really give you an answer?" Yeah. He goes, I get it. You're a rabbi. I understand. You hit the nail on the head. What should I tell you? I said, look, but the bottom line is, even in this kind of instance, people come before Yom Tov. They get all uptight. How much money is this Yom Tov costing us? How much money? And Pesach and the Pesach food, etc., etc. That they worry so much about the money that they can't even enjoy Yom Tov, because they constantly think to themselves, every time somebody around the table is eating another matzah, there goes 2 pounds. That's 2 pounds, that matzah. You ate a bit and you threw the rest in the bin. 2 pounds of matzah. Chill out. Do you know what I mean? Calm down. So whatever, money's as I said, money's not an easy thing. Money's a difficult thing. And yes, of course, it's easier sometimes to have money and not to have to struggle, but to have a lot of money is also a difficult test. And so therefore, but when Aaron and his children stand to lose money, we say, Tzav Aaron as of Lemor. Tell them, I understand you stand to lose money, but even so, even as difficult as it is, make sure you do what you're supposed to do and you don't let down your obligations. Okay? That's the first idea. Okay? Now we're going to mention another idea. There's an interesting idea. In this week's Sedra, we have the forerunner of benching Goma. We all know there are 4 things I need to bench Goma for, and then that's evolved into other things. What are the 4 things that we need to bench Goma for? Yeah? Brian's right. Brian says that people should appreciate the fact they're in a position to spend it. Not everybody's in the position to spend it, and you're right. Sometimes people don't appreciate that. Absolutely. What are the 4 things people bench Goma for? So it's brought in the Tehillim. Some people actually say this Tehillim before Mincha on Erev Shabbos. So that is somebody who was in jail. And again, the definition of being in jail is not necessarily being in jail like you are in jail nowadays. Because being in jail nowadays is not life-threatening. It's not a great place to be. Don't get me wrong. I don't recommend becoming somebody who lives in jail. On the other hand, in most jails, it's not that dangerous. That's number 1. But number 2, after jail, we have somebody who's had a life-threatening illness. Somebody who's crossed the desert, and somebody who has traveled through the sea. Those are the 4 different things where a person has to bench Goma for. And originally, before we used to bench Goma, what we used to do is we used to bring a korban, an offering to the Beis HaMikdash, a korban toda, a thanksgiving offering. And that thanksgiving offering is an offering that we used to bring with an animal and 40 loaves of bread. 30 of those loaves of bread were matzah. There was different types. You have chalas matzos, rikike matzos, and solas mubechas chalos b'lezer shemen, and chalos lechem chometz. So there's 3 types of matzah and then 1 type of chometz. That's the setup. That's how we have the different types of matzah and the different types of breads that come along with a korban. So Sephora points out an interesting thing about this korban, and that's the following. When we look at the korban toda, which is on page 574, but we're not really going to see it inside anyway, so you don't really have to look at it inside. But I told you these are the different types of bread. So again, we said we have 40 breads. You have 10 made of chometz, and you have 30 made of matzah. In general, almost every type of korban that you had in the Beis HaMikdash, everything had to be non-chometz. The only thing that is chometz is this korban toda. That's the only thing that's chometz. Says the Sephora note, we have over here chometz. We use chometz, and the reason we use chometz is because the chometz signifies the danger that a person went through. Now, what does that mean? So I'm not sure what it means that the chometz signifies the danger that he went through, but there's a very important idea to be understood over here without that. And the Sephora doesn't say this, but I think this might be an interesting idea to add to what Sephora says, and that's the following. when we look at our lives, oftentimes you will have this very unbalanced, whether it's a view, experience, whatever you want to call it. It's almost like 3-to-1. It's the 80, the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle. 80%, 20%. Never heard that?
Yes.
Elliot? Have you not heard it?
What's that?
Pareto principle, 80-20. Have you heard it? The 80-20 rule? I'll give you the rabbis Pareto principle, and from it you could probably, Michael, you could probably take it and you could turn it into the optician's principle if you wanted to. For example, many times it's going to be like this. There's 80%, 20%. 80% of my time is taken up by 20% of people in the shul. Yeah? How does that sound in the opticians?
Yeah, it sounds very like.
Does that sound? Yeah. As there are certain patients that are just on the phone constantly. You can't get them off the phone. You can't get them out of your surgery. There's constantly something wrong, and there might not be anything wrong with them. They're just lonely. They're bored. Whatever it is, they just need you to show them a bit of TLC. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you get that?
Yes.
Did you have that in your chemist as well, Alan?
Not really. You used to get the same ones coming in with prescriptions.
All right, but they needed the prescriptions. You know, how often do you need to come to an optician?
I don't
Once
have time to stand and chat.
Pardon?
I didn't have much time to stand and chat.
Well, okay. But did you have that many people coming in constantly?
Yes.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, good for you. Right?
Every 2
But
years.
Every 2 years, as they get older, less, right?
Yes.
I kept
As they get older, more frequent.
Every year once.
I kept
Every
the
year.
staff down to as low as possible.
Get the what?
Staff down. So
That's a different story, keeping the staff down to the... But I'll tell you that with the shul, 80% of my time might be taken up by 20% of the people, right?
Yeah.
There'll be other issues like that, 80% of issues come from 20%. You can come up with a lot of different, a lot of different applications of this, but you'll find it again and again. If you Google it, it's called the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle. And here also you have 3-to-1. 3 times matzah, 1 chometz. And that's really life. When you look at life and you say thank you, and this is something, I'll mention something about the Hagaddah here as well, because this is going to fit into the Hagaddah, and then we'll see if we'll come back to the Parasha and then mention one more thing about the Hagaddah. But it comes to, this is a Dvar Torah that's Hagaddah and Parasha Tzav related. When it comes to life, how many times can you say, this was such an exciting time. It was such an exciting day. You come home and you say to your wife, today was amazing. It was just so exciting. We had this in the office and everything worked out, etc., etc. Most days are what?
Not in pharmacy, it isn't.
Pardon?
Not in pharmacy, it isn't.
Why? What is it? Just boring? Same every day?
You get stress and
Yeah, sure, you get that kind of thing. Everybody gets stress and the
I know
sort.
what stress is till you've done a dispensary.
Pardon?
You know
Okay.
what stress is.
I guess as a rabbi, I don't know what stress is. I won't.
Counting all the bills.
Pardon? Whatever. I'm not even going to say that. I know.
You made a mistake those days. You got a criminal record.
A criminal record. Goodness gracious.
You made
Okay.
a mistake. Someone died. Yes.
If someone died, okay. I thought you made a mistake anytime. Okay, if someone died, they could get a criminal record. I can understand that. Pardon?
They're trying to stop it being a criminal offence.
All right, I understand that. But you have you got to be careful with these kind of things. But I remember once hearing the following saying: "Life is like chewing gum, a bit of flavor and lots of chewing." Yeah, and many times that's all it is. You get a bit of flavor here, a bit of flavor there, and then just chew, 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 chew. You don't get that much out of it, right? Once in a while, it's that bit of flavor, and that bit of flavor seems to be what we're saying thank you for. But in reality, we shouldn't really be saying thank you for only that little bit of flavor. That's not where we're at. God, every day is boring. Every day is, whoa, something serious happened. Okay, thank you, God. Oh, now back to boring. Boring, 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 boring. Something interesting happened again. Yeah? I mean, first of all, life's not meant to be like that. Life's meant to be, hopefully, life's interesting. It is. I find, Baruch Hashem, in my job, just so many different characters, so many different facets, so many different people. Life is always interesting. And anytime you think that it can't get stranger, yeah, isn't the truth stranger than fiction?
I had one fellow who used to drive me mad about e-numbers.
Yes.
One of the booklets had e-numbers.
Okay.
So driving mad, I was busy driving mad about e-numbers.
Yeah.
I said, well, you can buy the same thing kosher. Well, he turned around and said, well, any fool can say it's treif.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm sorry, I disagree with that one. Disagree with that. If there's a kosher option, there's a kosher option. Just buy the kosher option. It's exactly the same. I mean,
any fool can say it's straight.
You're right. Any fool can say it's straight. But what's the shtick in finding out if this one's kosher or not? Just buy the kosher one. What did you gain? So oh gosh, yeah, people make you sugar, right? Yeah, all sorts. Baruch Hashem. It takes all sorts to make a world, right? However, when we say we have 3/4 to 1/4, you have 3/4 of boring, so to speak, and 1/4 of life may be exciting. And the thank you offering, when we say thank you, we make sure that we give the person that message. It's 3 to 1. It's actually lots of boring, so to speak, and only a little bit exciting. But the thank you needs to be for the boring as well as for the exciting. You can't just thank God. Like when sometimes something exciting happens, wow, amazing. Your wife went out and made the most amazing supper. She just outdid herself. Then she gets a thank you. Your wife made supper tonight and it was just a regular supper. For that she deserves a thank you? What, for spaghetti? For pasta bolognese? No. She went out, she made lamb chops, she bought steaks. Oh, okay, I understand. And you're wrong. You're plain and simply wrong. Of course your wife deserves to be given a thank you for everything. In the same way, we also want to be thanked for everything that we do. You don't want to get a thank you. Imagine if you bought your kid something small. They never say thank you. Only when you buy a kid a bike. Wow, daddy, a bike, thank you. Yeah, I also bought you a lock, whatever. Yeah, what do you mean, whatever? Well, the lock's only 10 pounds and the bike's 150 pounds. So, I don't owe it to you. I didn't need to buy a lock for you. I didn't need to buy anything, right? Whatever I give you is more than you should have had. You can't just say, well, you don't deserve a thank you for that. That's just normal. That's just the regular. I only give thank you for the big things. Says the Torah, the 3 to 1 principle. You got 3 times matzah, simple, flat, nothing, and 1 times chametz. But that's what life's going to look like. And the thank you needs to be for both of them. The thank you needs to be for everything. And in the same idea, very beautiful idea that I saw in the Hagaddah. So we're just going to slip over to Hagaddah slightly, and then we're going to come back. The Hagaddah says, originally our forefathers were idol worshippers, and now HaKadosh Baruch Hu has brought us close to his avodah, to his service. And the Gemara tells us, the Gemara tells us that you start with the negative and then you move on to the positive. And the question that they ask is, what's the point of starting with the negative? Why do we have to be maskle beginus? Why do we have to start with all the bad things that happened to the Jewish people and then only move into the good? Just tell me the good that happened. So he gives the following mashal. I saw this mashal brought, the beautiful parable that's given. It says the following. There was a man who sadly went through the war, and he thought everybody had died. He went back to his old shtetl. He thought literally there's nobody left. And he's alone, all alone in his world. And suddenly he gets a card, and it's a card from his cousin in America. And he says, my dear friend, I've been told that you're still alive. I've paid for your visa. Come to America. Come. Let's go. Here's the ticket. And the man is so excited, and he gets on the boat, and he goes to America. And when he gets to America, he meets his cousin, and his cousin has one look at him and goes, you look awful. You need to go to a doctor. Doctor, I feel fine. You need to go to a doctor. He goes to the doctor looks him over. He says, you got this wrong and that wrong, and you got this problem and that problem, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And his cousin says, no problem. And his cousin pulls out the money, and he starts paying for the treatment, and he starts paying for his dental treatment, and he starts paying for his medication, and it's for hospital stays, etc., etc. And then when he's finished with the medication and everything, then he takes him into his home, and he helps him find a job, and he helps him buy a house. And 20 years later, this man now has a child. He has a daughter, and he's making a chasna for his daughter. And he's invited his cousin. And his cousin, who had brought him over to America, had given, obviously he's a well-to-do fellow, he had given a beautiful amount of money to the young couple. He had given a nice check for $10,000, and the couple's all excited. And the fellow is dancing with him in the two cousins are dancing in the middle, having a good dance. And finally, with the music blaring in the background and everything, finally the fellow who went through the war looks at his cousins who took him out of the problems. And he says to him, Yango, thank you. He says, thank you. He says, yeah, thank you. He says, no. Come outside for a minute. All right. So he comes outside. And now repeat after me. Repeat after you. All right. I was in a concentration camp. And I went through the ravages of the war. And after I finished, I thought I had lost my entire family. And you sent me a letter. And you brought me over to America. And you sent me to a doctor. And you had the doctor treat me. And then you sent me to hospital, and you paid for the hospital bills, and you paid for my dental treatment, and you paid for my medication, and you gave me a house, and you married me off, and you helped me along the way, and now I have children, and I made a chasna, and you gave a beautiful present to my children, and I'd like to thank you for everything. That's what I wanted to hear from you. Well, you want to give me a thank you now for the check that I dropped off at you? Yes, of course you're right. You should be saying thank you for the check that you received. Of course you should be doing that. But beyond the check that you received, there was so much more that went into this story. Where's the last 20 years? Yeah? Where's the fact that I brought you out of Europe? Where's the fact that I gave you a job, that I gave you a house? Says the Torah, says the Hagaddah, you start with the negative. We don't say, Hashem, we're here, we're free. Hashem, do you know, originally our forefathers were idol worshippers, and we were enslaved, and we had it terrible, and you took us out of Egypt, etc., etc. You did all this for us. And you give the entirety of the view of it, that's a very, very different discussion. That's a very different thank you. Because it's not only the thank you for the last big thing at the end, but for the entire process. The thank And we see the same idea in Parashas Kisava. In Parashas Kisava, we discuss the bikurim that were brought, the first fruits that were brought by the Jews. And you bring the first fruits and you come to Yerushalayim and you have to put down the first fruits, and then you have to say the following. Arami, meaning Love and Arami, wanted to get rid of my father. They went to Mitzrayim and they enslaved them, and then things were difficult and got us out with great miracles, etc., etc. And then, he brought us to this place. He gave us this land, and then and now I brought the first fruits that Hashem gave me. You put it down, and then you bow down to Hashem. Why do we do that? Because to say thank you just for the fruits at the end is missing the boat. Who took you out of Egypt? Who did the miracles? Who took you through the desert? Who gave you the Torah? Who smote the 31 kings? Who let you come into this country? Who gave you this land? Who made this land fruitful? And then you brought the fruits. Wow. That's a thank you. That's how you say thank you. But to just say thank you at the end, by the way, thank you for that little point at the end. Say to your wife, thank you very much. You put that little extra dash of salt in tonight. That was great. Yeah? Wait a minute. Who went to the shop? And who cut up the meat? And who cooked it? And who made sure it was, all the bits and pieces that she did. To just say thank you for the little bit of extra salt that you put at the end, because she knows you like it a little bit spicier, a little bit saltier. That's the only thing you can say thank you for. Everything else you don't need to say thank you for. So that's why we say over here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we realize and we understand and we say thank you for the 3 matzahs as well as the chometz. We're not only having a thank you for the special event, we thank you also for the mundane, the day events. Okay.
If we weren't enslaved, we wouldn't have to be taken out.
Okay, that's an excellent question, but it's not for tonight. It's an excellent. It's an excellent question. You can say, Hashem, thank you very much for taking us out of Egypt. Whoa. Who put us into Egypt? Yeah, that's a brilliant question. Very, very good question. The short answer, because it's not for tonight, I wasn't going to speak about that tonight. The short answer to that question is that it was necessary for whatever reason, which again we're not going to discuss tonight, to bring the Jews into Egypt, to do something for them that would make, or that would create, a spiritual cleanliness or purity within the Jewish people when they did that. So because she wasn't, pardon?
It made it worse. 4/5 didn't get out.
Those are the 4/5 that that didn't take the lesson, but those that did take the lesson, it was necessary. It was, again, as I said, it's a longer discussion. It's not specifically for tonight. It's an excellent question. To say thank you, God. If you work it over to someone and you punched him in the face, you go, "I'm a medic. I can bandage that up." Yeah. What you punch me in the face for? He says, no, but I'm a paramedic. I will bandage that. I'll make sure that looks as good as new. Don't punch me next time. Do me a favor. I'm not asking you to punch me, and then don't bandage it. That's literally what you're saying, right? That's what God did to us. God took us into Egypt, and then He gives us this full amount of horror and pain and suffering, and then He takes us out and we go, "Wow, thank you for taking us out. What would you put us in for? Why'd you get me there in the first place?" Excellent question. As I said, not for tonight. Okay, last idea I want to say about the Pasha. Maybe we'll say one more idea. We see if we have the time to say it about it. In the Korban Mincha. The Korban Mincha, also again, as I saw it tonight, I think as well, in the Seforno says that the Mincha was brought entirely, and the Mincha was a flour offering that was brought entirely to the Mizbeach. You would take a bit off, that would go on the Mizbeach, and the rest the Kohanim would get back. But he says it's not, don't misunderstand the Korban Mincha as that the Kohanim received whatever it is and God received whatever it is. That's not the way it is. The whole thing was given to God, and then God took a piece and gave it back to the Kohanim. Right? And I think it's a very, very different view of things. When you say things are mine, or things belong to Hashem, and Hashem's been gracious enough to share them with me. Right? Makes a very, very big difference. When everything is mine, then you get very, very frustrated, and you get very, very uptight about your money, about your car, about your house, etc., etc. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't take care of your things. Don't leave the door open at night and say, "Yeah, it's God's things anyway." If a guy from Mossad comes in and decides to take my things, then God decided to give it to him. No, then don't be stupid, right? That's not what we mean. But I remember, for example, I once was driving down Upper Park Road, and it was a tight squeeze, and I thought I could get through, and lo and behold, I didn't. And I scratched someone's car. They scratched my car, I scratched their car. It wasn't fun. And I'm looking at this car and thinking to myself, "Oh, no. Why?" And the fellow came out. I parked up, and the fellow came out, and I had one look at him. I say, "Rabbi so-and-so," I knew who he was. "I'm really sorry." He goes, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, I was trying to get past your car, and I got a little bit too close, and I scratched your car." "Right, thanks, see you." I'm like, "What do you mean, thanks, see you?" He goes, "The car is there to serve me. I'm not here to serve my car." Right? That's a great way of thinking of it. Now, again, I'm not saying he purposely rammed into the side of his car and broke this out, but there was a tiny scratch. He said, "Look, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. My car is here to serve me. I need my car to get from A to B, and in general, I don't want it to look like it's had like a demolition ball gone through it. But a little scratch here, a little scratch there, okay. It doesn't look as nice as it could. But when it's mine, and you've stepped on my toes and ruined my car, then you're very, very nervous. And you get very frustrated. And then you get very angry. Right? But when you say to yourself, "Look, Hashem's giving me whatever I have. Everything I have comes from Hashem. Thank God I have a car. I could have not had a car." Yeah? It's much more difficult without a car. I know people that have told me that towards the end of the month, there's no more money left. They need to walk. They don't have money for petrol. Yeah? You have money for petrol, Baruch Hashem. Thank God I have money for petrol. There are people that the last 2-3 days of the month have to walk. Would you want to have to walk? So say, "Hashem, I have a car." Yeah, but it's got a bang in it. You know what? When they had to walk when it was snowing, and I could go in my car, I was quite happy with my car, even if it had a dent. It was much better than walking out in the snow or walking out in the rain. But when it's my car and my items and my things, and how dare you step on my things and ruin my things? Well, yeah, then you get very, very nervous. And you get very, very frustrated. And then you know what to do with yourself. And that's the important thing to realize, and that's the important thing to recognize. When we say the mincha, but the mincha is just a symbolism for everything else in our life. The karban mincha entirely belonged to God, and then God gave us a kickback. He gave the Kohanim a kickback for them to be able to keep some part of this mincha. Everything in this world belongs to God. I know people that write into the Svarim. I don't know why they don't write in anything else. In the Svarim seems to be the frum thing to do it in. Lashem ha'aretz, God owns everything. Birshus, but the one who's holding on to it now at the moment is, and then they write their name. Lots of people say, if you open up a safe and you find Lamed Hey Vov, that stands for Lashem, to God, Ha'aretz, the land, Umlo, and everything in it. God owns this earth, this land, and everything that's in this land. Yeah? We all know the famous story about the plot of earth. Yeah, two people were fighting about a plot of land. One guy said it was mine, the other guy said it was mine. They came to the rabbi, and the rabbi came and he bent his ear down and he listens to the plot of land. He says, I'm listening. He says, what does the plot of land say? Plot of land says, at one point or another, both of you will belong to him. Yeah? And it's very true, right? Sadly, that's the bottom line for everyone. Right? But if you realize, you say, Hashem, everything is from you, and whatever you've given me is so wonderful, and I appreciate what I have, as opposed to thinking everything is yours. This bit is God's and everything else is mine. Yeah? This is the minchas, is really God's way of telling us how everything is. All my money really belongs to God, and God has decided to share it with me. How lovely, how wonderful. As opposed to the other way around. No. Everything is mine. And 5 quid goes to God for charity. Yeah, God, that's your part. God's like, no. The whole thing's mine. This is your part. Very, very different way of looking at things. Right? Lastly, just one more thing about the Hagaddah. And we're going to finish with this. When you look in the Hagaddah has a very interesting thing that it says. When it comes to it says we were servants or slaves to Par Mitzrayim, and God took us out. And if God hadn't taken us out of Egypt, then us and our children's children would all be enslaved to God in Egypt. Etc. Many people ask the obvious question, and that doesn't make any sense. But if God hadn't taken us out of Egypt, we'd still be in Egypt. Why should we still be in Egypt? Emancipation, freedom, liberalism, Western morals. Why not? We're making this declaration. God, you took us out of Egypt. Had you not taken us out of Egypt, we'd be still stuck in Egypt. Who says? Logically speaking, that doesn't make any sense. So it's an interesting answer, and I think there's a lot of truth in this answer as well. Just because to you it's logical, just because to you it seems to make sense, doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. Doesn't mean that that's the way it really is. Right? He gives the example. He said, after World War I was a terrible war. And the problem with World War I is that it was followed by World War II. And so nobody remembers World War I because everything happened in World War II. And nobody discusses World War I because everybody discusses the catastrophic fallout from World War II. And similarly, Rabbi Wein, as I was listening to, as I mentioned, I listen to a lot of him nowadays. He said a lot of the things that happened in the shtetl, if you think about the Crusades, if you think about the Cossack uprising, you think about the shtetl and things that happened there, they were terrible and people would remember them. The only problem is that they were eclipsed entirely by the Holocaust. And everybody focuses so much on the Holocaust that they don't think about all the other tragedies we went through. They pale in comparison. So World War I pales in comparison to World War II. But World War I was a terrible, terrible battle, and a terrible war, where people fought wars in the trenches over tiny plots of land, and thousands of young men died for what? An acre or two of land? And then moved a little bit this way, moved a little bit that way, moved a little bit this way, moved a little bit that way. I remember Howard Gruber told me, he said he once went to Belgium. And when he was in Belgium, they took him to a certain place where there was a battle in World War I. And he said it was a tiny piece of land, tiny. Not very big. And they said 100,000 men died for this piece of land. You got 100,000 men for this tiny little piece of land? Nowadays, property developers, buy this kind of property for nothing. 100,000 people should die for this tiny piece of land? How does that make sense? It's a terrible war, back and forth in the trenches. And when that war finished, everybody said, this war was so terrible. They swore, we're going to create an alliance that's going to make sure there'll be no more wars. 20 years later, what happened 20 years later? All over again, and worse. And then when World War II ended, what did people say at the end of World War II? Never again. And we're going to get our act together and create something called the United Nations. Well, first you had the League of Nations, turned to the United Nations. And the United Nations, everybody's going to have a representative, and we're going to be fair, and we're going to make sure to police the world, and all these terrible atrocities are not going to happen anymore. Yeah? Does this sound familiar? Does it sound sensible? Obviously it sounds sensible. Is this what happened? Not at all. Yeah? The UN is, from a Jewish standpoint, the UN's a joke. Yeah? The whole thing is just one big joke. They put out as many anti-Israel resolutions in the UN as the rest of the world. And countries like, Saudi Arabia are sending in petitions to say that Israel violates human rights. Yeah? They violate human rights? Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, Israel's not, we all know that it's not an easy place. But let's be honest about it. Coming from Saudi Arabia, that's a paradise, especially if you're a woman. Goodness gracious, what they do to women over there in some of these Muslim countries, not to be believed. The way they've been persecuted and held down. And then they say Israel is a violator of human rights. Coming from them, Or Israel has made up this idea that they had a temple on the Temple Mount. We've had, I've said this previously, we've had a glorious history of over 3,000 years. There are countries in Africa that have been illiterate until the last 20 years, that are telling us, who have an illustrious history of over 3,000 years, that we didn't live in Israel. You don't even know how to read and write. You didn't exist then. There were tribal people killing each other in your country when we had a wonderful society. And you're telling us, well, the world's crazy. The world's a crazy place. And just because something seems to make sense, or logically it should make sense, doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. Logically, it makes the most sense. You know what? Obviously, we would have gotten free sometime. But just because logic dictates that we would have gotten free at one point or another, doesn't mean that we actually would have gotten free. No. Maybe we would have gotten free. Not definitely. We can say that's illogical. World history is illogical. You look at world history, it's as we said before, stranger than fiction. Things happen and you look at it and you go, that's so weird. Who would have expected that? So many times in world history, who would have expected that? I say here again, who would have expected that? So we say, we don't know. If God hadn't taken us out, maybe there wouldn't have been such a thing as emancipation. We were the first emancipated people. We were the first people to get out. We were the people to give the world morality. You don't know that in 1800 somebody would have come up with morality if not for us having the Judeo-Christian morals for years and years before that. They cottoned on and they said, this is morality. Who says? We figured this out. Shalom Aleichem, we've been here for 2,000 years. But not because something makes sense is that what's going to happen. And so therefore we say, Hari onu vanenu, us, our children's children, we might have still been a slave to Pharaoh if God hadn't taken us out. There's no guarantees. Life is stranger than fiction, and there's no guarantees for anything. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for everybody who joined us live, and do hope you join us again next week.